Good morning or afternoon or evening, as the case may be, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. This is Tableau Modern Thermometer. We are Concourse Hosting. I'm Glenn Kendall with Concourse Hosting, and with me today is Holly Kendall.
Hi, everybody.
So our service here at Concourse, we specialize in hosting for organizations that have black box software, and we also provide a service where we do Tableau. We host Tableau server, and we help you get going with Tableau. So the purpose of the webinar that we do on a weekly or quasi-weekly basis is really to help you guys get in, start digging in, and using Tableau and getting some value out of it. And if you're new to GoToWebinar, here's just a little bit of housekeeping about how the control panel works. Basically, you're going to want to minimize the control panel so it's not taking up a big chunk of your screen. There's a section there below the wombat where you want to pop that out so you can ask questions. We'll answer questions as we go here. So just if a question pops into your head, just go ahead and type it in. And we'll be watching for that and answer your questions as we go. And then after you do that, hit the red button there at the top next to the control panel, and that will collapse the control panel down so you can see more of the screen. So if you're going to follow along, which I recommend from home, you want to try this at home, you'll need Tableau Desktop as a bare minimum. If you don't have Tableau Desktop, if you haven't bought that yet, you can get it for a free trial. Or you can also use Tableau Public. It's basically the same thing as Tableau Desktop, except you can only publish to the Tableau Public server. But that's fine if you're just getting in and playing around with things. Today, we'll also be using Tableau Server. That's where our data source is. So we build data sources for our customers based on Razor's Edge. And what we're doing is using Razor's Edge Query and basically making those data sources look and act like Razor's Edge Query does, at least as close as you can within Tableau. So we have a data source for gifts, we have another one for constituents, and another one for actions. We're continuing to build out more, but those are really the primary ones. Today, we're going to be looking at the gifts data source. Okay. Thermometer. There's probably no fundraising graphic that people in nonprofit world love more than the thermometer chart. It's ubiquitous. Everywhere you go, somebody has a thermometer because there's a goal, right? You're trying to show progress toward a goal, and you want to get that thermometer all the way to the top. But the thermometer is, it's kind of a tired graphic. And so we're going to show how to do the same kinds of things, progress toward a goal, and make a more modern take on a thermometer. So how you do that is something called the bullet chart or bullet graph. And so we'll be going through what the different components of that are, color options and reference lines, and all that sort of thing. Just so I get a sense of who's in the audience today and what your experience level is with Tableau, if you don't mind. This will also be a practice for typing in the question section. Go ahead and just type into the question section and let us know what your experience level is with Tableau. Anywhere from, I don't know how to spell Tableau, I'm just learning, to, I've been using it for a while and I'm a pro. Okay, so it looks like we have a lot of people that are new. A couple people have some experience.
Couple people, yes, about a year or so experience.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it looks as though we have new people.
So I'm curious, out of you new people, how many of you actually have Tableau Desktop? Just go ahead and type it in the question section there. I'm asking the questions and you're answering, so it's kind of backwards. No, yes, no, trial only.
No.
have it, but haven't really started using it yet. So for those of you that do not have it, I would recommend getting a trial and playing with that, just so that if nothing else, you can follow along. Also get Tableau Public. To use Tableau Public, it works exactly the same as Tableau Desktop. It's just when you want to publish something, which you won't need to do when you're just playing around, you can only publish it to the Tableau Public server so everyone in the world can see it. So you won't want to do that unless you have, you know, anonymized data and that sort of thing. But it's a perfectly good learning tool. And it can sit side by side with Tableau Desktop. So you can have both Tableau Public and Tableau Desktop installed on your system at the same time. So just a recommendation to keep in mind there. We are recording this, so we will post this on YouTube within a day after it's done, so you can watch it later as well and see some of the other videos that we've made in the past. All right, we're going to dive right in here. So again, we're using Tableau Desktop 10.3, which is the latest and greatest version. So we're going to go ahead and fire that up here. When you open Tableau, it's going to ask you to connect to data. So if you're just starting out, you'll probably want to do an export of some kind. Export your data, which you're used to doing, to do reporting things anyway, probably. And that's a good way to get things started. Like I said earlier, with our service, we publish data sources based on Razor's Edge to Tableau server, and then it lives in there. And then it gets refreshed on a regular basis. If you host with us, it's done nightly. If you don't host with us, it's done however often you send us a database. Or if you're hosted with Blackbaud, we'll pull your backups off of Blackbaud and get them that way. So Holly's going to go ahead and she's going to be building everything here. I'm going to kind of turn it over to her at this point, but she's going to connect to Tableau server by selecting that. So this is the sample database in Razor's Edge that we're using. So, you know, you can use the same sort of thing for your own learning and testing purposes as well. So like I said, we have 3 different data sources that we've built at this point: actions, constituents, and gifts. Again, based on Razor's Edge query, the same kind of fields that are in query are in Tableau in our data sources. Special thing just for us when you work with us. So we're going to use gifts. Okay, so we're connected it now. Someone had a question. I think it's a technical question that they can't hear. I'm guessing everyone else can hear because I'm asking questions and people are responding. So I think, Amy, it might be something on your end if you can't hear. I think everyone else is able to hear us just fine. Cool. We're going to go in here. And yeah, someone else said they can hear. Cool. So that's the gifts data source that we're connected to now, and then we're going to start on the worksheet. Okay, so I'm going to let Holly take it from here and do the play-by-play, and I'll just kind of chime in here and there.
Sounds good. Okay, so for those of you who are new, this is the building space in Tableau Desktop. So when you first load it up, all of the data that we just saw on the previous data source page here is brought up here on the left-hand side. And I've kind of opened this up a bit so we can see all of the data that's in here. By default, Tableau will sort your data into dimensions, which is up top, and measures, which are down here on the bottom. It also sorts things based on some color. You can kind of see if I mouse over down here, most of the things here in the measures are green, and if I were to mouse over some stuff in the dimensions, they are blue. So if something is a dimension, it means it's like a category, something that your data can be sorted by. If we were to open up one of these tables here in dimensions, like this makes sense, right? Constituency, bank name, acknowledge, things that you can sort your data by, which means that the measures are going to actually be the numbers themselves. Which you can see here by some of these fields: gift amount, level of detail, fund overall goal, etc. Looks like we have a question coming up here. how do we import data to Tableau from RE? Do we export the data from RE in Excel file and then import them into Tableau?
So yeah, I think just for purposes of testing and getting going, you can just export it into Excel or an Access database format, you know, CSV file, whatever. Just any way that Tableau can get at it. You can actually, if you host yourself, you know, you can connect Tableau directly to your Microsoft SQL server and talk to the tables on the back end. I don't recommend that unless you're an advanced user and you know what you're doing, because the table layout in there can be very complicated. So the advantage of doing an export is that you just limit the amount of data that you're looking at and, you know, just make it simpler for yourself that way. So that's a good way to start. And then, but moving forward, if you're like, okay, I kind of got the hang of this, like I know what I'm doing, but I want my data to be refreshed more often, then, you know, that's where the data sources and the Tableau server comes in.
Great. All right. So differences between dimensions and measures. One is the category, the other is a number. Differences between if something is green or blue. A green value means that it is continuous. A blue value means that it is discrete. So most of the time you're going to find that measures will be continuous and dimensions will be discrete, but there might be some overlap between, you might have a continuous dimension or a discrete measure.
Yeah, those are more rare, but it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, so if we're making thermometer chart, first thing we need to actually do is get some, you know, gift amount visible for us to see. That way we can start building, you know, our thermometer. So we're going to get the field gift amounts level of detail. And why do we need level of detail rather than just gift amount? Why is level of detail important here?
So this particular measure is a calculated field. So if you're doing an export yourself, you may not need to do this, just depending on how you export the data. But what a level of detail does is it basically eliminates duplicates. So if you have an instance where you're exporting your data and you have gift IDs and you have like the same gift ID in your data more than once because your data is denormalized, then you'll need to do something called a level of detail. And if you want to right-click on that calculated field and show them, just edit copy.
Edit copy here, yeah, so you can see what it looks like.
So I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about the level of detail, but just know that it exists, know that it's important if you have more than one ID for a given amount, so a gift's ID for a given amount, just to eliminate duplicates. Okay. And you can just hit
that up, and I'm going to hit this undo button to get rid of the copy.
So when she double-click there, it's basically doing a sum then on the gift amount. So for all of our data, we're basically summing up the total of all the gifts we've ever received. Mm-hmm. So then just double-clicking on it will add it to the graph there. And it automatically assumes if you're doing a measure that you want to sum it. You can do other things with it, but that is, in fact, what we want to do. We want to add it up.
Makes sense. All right, so now that we actually have our total amount of gifts, we want to apply that to something, right? We need to give it, you know, another type of field here to work with. So we're going to be using fund overall goal, level of detail.
So this is another value that is within Razor's Edge in a query, you know, so a gift query has this, the overall goal. And again, we're doing that at the level of detail. So we're basically looking at, you know, what's the overall goal for the fund, for a particular fund, and what's the total amount of gifts that have been given. So when you just double click and add it, Tableau is trying to figure out, it's not quite sure what you want to do with it, so it makes a scatter plot out of it.
So that's not particularly helpful with what we're trying to do right now. Tableau did its best guess, but it was way off the mark. So what we can do is go up to Show Me, which is in the top right-hand corner. And if your control panel's in the way, you can just kind of drag it so you can see this. And by clicking on Show Me, you get a sense of all the different types of graphs and visualizations that can be made in Tableau. And something is grayed out, it just means you don't have the required fields up here in columns or rows for that type of graph or chart to exist. Fortunately, to make a bullet graph, we have enough fields ready that we can just do that.
Right, so you need 2 measures. You don't need any dimensions, although you can have some, and blammo, bullet graph.
And notice that when I clicked that, Tableau automatically rearranged where the fields are in order to make the bullet graph happen. So it took the fund overall goal and placed it down here on the marks card, which is a tool that helps define visually the, the graph or the chart. So we'll return to the marks card later in the webinar. So, okay, we have a bullet chart now, but we want it to be, more thermometer-like to start with. So we're going to hit swap, which means that it's now, instead of gift amount, level of detail, and columns, it's in rows, which means we're looking at this vertically. Kind of seeing the beginnings of the thermometer start to form here.
So since we're doing fund overall goal, let's look at this across different funds to see how those funds are doing against their goals.
Right, so here in dimensions, since we have a lot of data in dimensions, we have organized these by some tables.
And again, this is similar to how it's laid out within a gift query.
Mm-hmm. So all I'm doing is going into the table funds, and then we're going to go down to fund description. So if I double click on that, it's brought up some funds here.
So again, this is a sample database. So this is the kind of stuff that if you're used to the Razor's Edge sample data, this is the kind of stuff that you would see in there.
Right, so we're currently looking at a lot of stuff right here, and it's also vertical, which is hard to read. So we're going to do a couple of things real quick here. First thing is that I don't want to have to even attempt to figure out what any of these are trying to say by turning my head. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a filter on the same field, fund description. So we're going to drag this over to the filters, which will bring up this entire new window, which is all of the different fund descriptions. For now, I'm going to click all, just making, actually, we'll leave null out. We'll leave null out, and then we'll hit apply, which brings it up here. Okay. Then I'm going to show the filter. So the filter is still active in the workbook, even if it's not being shown. But by showing it, it allows your end users to be able to interact with this filter and change what is visually shown in this report, which is pretty cool. I want to go down and find, first, let us do that. She'll actually be much easier. And we'll go to Building Fund. Then, because this is a huge amount of text that we're just looking at here, I'm going to click this tiny drop-down arrow and change this to a drop-down list. That way it just looks much cleaner.
Okay, this is starting to look a little more thermometer-y.
So I think I just want to get some basic formatting done first, just so this is a bit easier to work with as we go on. First things first, I want to drag this out just so it's bigger. I'm going to do some kind of simple formatting to begin with. Just bringing this font size up a bit, making that bold, making this even bigger. There we go. Probably is redundant to see building funded fund description at the top. So I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to hide field labels. And then we're going to go over to the y-axis, and we're going to do the same type of thing. But notice I can't just hide this, or else my numbers will be gone too. So we need to edit instead. and I'm just going to delete the title. If I hit apply, you can see that the numbers have gone over, which means we can now format the numbers just so everything is more legible. I find working with small font is very difficult. Right, and dragging this side out.
And you'll think about your end users as well. You know, if you're making a thermometer chart, maybe this is something that you want to, you know, have in a dashboard or displaying your website. So making it visually appealing and easy to read.
So we got the easy to read part down, but visually this is kind of bland.
Well, it's blue and gray, if you like blue and gray. Maybe you're a Penn State fan, you like blue and gray.
All right, so what do we need to do in order to make this more exciting? You can right click on something, maybe that'll allow us to do some formatting.
Well, first maybe you can talk a little about, I can see in the thermometer, so usually in a thermometer chart it's like, you know, there's a goal, so I see the line up at the top for the goal, but then there's also this banding going on. So if you could talk a little about the banding.
Yeah, so it looks as though Tableau has just defaulted some banding for us. It just goes up by, looks like every million.
Yeah, so there's lines for every million, but then there's banding like up to 6 million, and then another band 6 to 8, and then another band 8 to 10.
So it looks like that will be a percent of goal type of banding. So in this case, it'll be 60%, and then 80%, and then you know, you don't have to specify 100%. It just, the rest is 100% of the goal. And so what I'm going to do, just so we can get a better sense of what the different banding is and maybe make it easier to look at, I'm going to right click on the numbers here, and we're going to go to Edit Reference Line, which is giving us the two different reference lines we're looking at. Notice that both of them are also average. So we have the 60-80% average fund overall goal, which is the kind of dark gray to lighter gray banding that's happening. And then we have average fund overall goal, which will be the very top line. So these are two separate things that we want to go in and start editing.
Right, so this is something when you make, just when we did that show me, when we first made a bullet graph, that it automatically added these two separate reference lines. And Holly's going to show you the difference between these two in a minute here. But just know that there are two separate reference lines happening that it just automatically put in, and that's sort of what's defining this shading and the thermometer aspect of it.
Okay. So what we're first going to do is change the 60-80% of average. So right now, we're looking at the distribution, which is these two different gray boxes, basically. And Tableau has by default defined this as distribution rather than line, band, or box plot. In this case, we want distribution, so that was good. But we don't want average, we want total. And I think we want to also change this from gray to something a bit more colorful.
Oh, if you insist.
So what we're going to do is I just clicked on the value box itself, and we're going to make some changes. First, I think 60-80 is not particularly exciting. Can you imagine getting to 60% of your goal and that still not being, you know, a good color? Would still be whatever it would be the same color currently as if you just made 10% of your goal.
It's less gray. We like gray here in Seattle.
So I'm just going to change this to the symbol 25-50, and I'll add another one, 75 percentages. And we like sum, but we don't want average of the sum. We want total.
In this case, it doesn't matter, but yeah, we want, you just want to be consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think consistency is good. If we're thinking total amount, we want totals. And notice that when I added 75, another color appeared. So now we have dark gray, lighter gray, and then even lighter gray.
So how many percentages can you put in there?
You can put in as many as you want.
You can put
As long
1,
as the
2, 3,
percentages,
4, 5.
yeah, as long as the percentages add up to
All right.
100%. Right, and then maybe a label. That would be good. So if we say value, okay, that's just telling us basically what the y-axis is telling us. Computation. In this case, it's a little too specific because it's naming what the exact field name is. So what we can do is we can say custom and then call it custom computation. Okay, well, what's the difference here? Well, it's just not using the exact field name. It's making it so it says 75% of total rather than.
Yeah, I think that's just a little easier to comprehend. So, yeah. They don't need to know what we're calling it on the back end. Just know it's 50% of the total. Yeah.
Right.
In this case, we're making it easy. We pick values that are easy. You know, the goal is, it's in factors of 10, right? So 10 million is the goal.
All right, so now we need to change the fill color because gray.
You don't need to, but.
I think we need to.
Okay, fine, we need to.
Because otherwise, you know, there's no sense of having a thermometer chart if no one can be excited about it.
Exactly.
So if we're starting with gray, maybe we could just kind of see what some of these other colors do. Okay, I mean, teal is okay. Green is also okay. Maybe gold. Gold is getting better. Definitely bringing out some brightness in it. But I think maybe stoplight.
There we go.
Would be good.
Although for the colorblind people, maybe not. But
it's true. They do have a colorblind version of stoplight, which I think is what they call the blue-yellow light.
More of a pastel-y stoplight.
So, stoplight it is.
Cool.
All right, so we currently have changed the distribution.
Right, the reference line, that's the distribution.
On the thermometer chart, but we also want to change, we've changed one line, we want to make sure we're changing the second reference line too, that way we are being consistent throughout the viz.
Right.
So in this case, I'm right-clicking up here just so we get a sense of this is the line we want to change. But really, we're going to have to click here to go get to the reference line itself.
Yeah, either way you can do it. So you can either get to the reference line by clicking on the line itself and saying edit, or you can click on the axis and then say edit reference line, and then pick the second reference line. So one is a distribution, which we just did, and then the second one, which she's going to click on now, you'll see is the goal at the top, which is the total, which is just a line. So there's different types of reference lines you can have. Again, the first one was a distribution, and this one is just a line. Okay.
All right. So consistency. If we've changed our distribution into total, probably means that we should change our goal also to a total, right? And then we can also just do some basic formatting with this one as well. If we wanted to change the line, we could maybe make it a dashed line, a thicker line, whatever, you know, visually you need to make the goal stand out everyone else.
You can also change the fill above the line so that, because I personally can't tell the difference between, and I don't even know if there's a difference between that green and then if you go above the green, what that is. So yeah, maybe not black, but
you
could do pink or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the goal line can be pink and then the fill line can match it, I think.
Or the fill. There's the line and then the fill. So do the fill instead of black for the fill.
I think it only wants me to do.
You can pick a color.
It's very hard to see pastel-y colors from a distance here. But we keep the line black and then we'll do pink or something up top.
Yeah. Or whatever. You know, I think the point is just so you can see, you know, these are some of the options that are available to you. And you could optionally do just a color up at the top and then no colors down below instead of the stoplight. So you would only get to the color when you meet the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so maybe some more kind of visual definition would be good too. Maybe, whoops, that was the wrong one.
So maybe format that.
Yep, I hit edit rather than format. All right, so maybe we can give this some lines that are a little bit more distinct than just these black lines. Now maybe we can make them dashes, tiny dashes. I guess these would be dots. We can change the color on them. We can change the thickness of those dashes. That way they're very visible and they are consistent with the thickness we made for the top line.
I like tiny dashes.
Well, tiny dashes?
Tinier. There we go. It's like Pac-Man.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then we can probably also change the font a little bit. Maybe make that a bit bigger and bold, just so that's easier to read. And let's also change the alignment, just so that it's centered. That way, as the bar is going up, you can see it kind of take over each of the totals.
Right.
And cover up those totals once it makes them.
Okay. What about the Mercury, the blue part of the graph, the part that's the actual amount of money that's been received?
Mm-hmm. So I had mentioned earlier about how fund overall goal had been moved onto this card here. So this is when we're going to return to this card. So in order to visually define what is happening to the fund description over here, we get to change it on the marks card. So just click on color and then just pick a color that you think is suitable for your Mercury. You can make it gray, make it black, we can keep it blue, we can make it vibrant green, we can make it white. White makes it seem like there's a hole in it though.
Yeah, well, Pac-Man is gonna...
That's fine, we'll maybe do a light gray. And I'm also gonna give it a border. I like giving things borders. They just pop a little bit more. So there's a bit of contrast happening.
Okay. The crowd has been silent for a little while, so maybe we'll give them a chance to absorb this. Is there any questions about what we've covered so far about reference lines? You understand that we have two reference lines here. One's a distribution, one's an actual line. Any questions about how any of this is working? Somebody asked the question, what happens when you bring back other funds into the view from the filter? Do they keep the same formatting?
Well, that is a great question. Let's just pick one. Botanical Garden Fund. Sounds interesting. So we can see what's happened here, that each fund operates
because
separately.
Because
the scale is off compared to what the Botanical Garden Fund is compared to the Building Fund.
So yeah, they'll keep the formatting, but because the goal is so much lower for the Botanical Fund, it kind of crams everything down there. And it's actually surpassed its goal. So depending on what your data situation looks like, that may make sense. Like if you have things that are in the same, have a similar goal, then the formatting and the layout will be, will look good when they're put next to each other. But if you have things that are an order of magnitude different from each other, then you're going to get something like this. So keep that in mind. And you can also define you know, in this particular case, we're getting the fund overall goal from the data. So this just happens to be a field that's defined within Razor's Edge. You could also define a goal within the visualization itself. You could create a parameter. That's an option right up in the visualization where you can create a parameter and have the user type in an amount. So they could type in what the goal is. That could be useful if you want to have something that's more flexible. You know, the goal may be varying on something over time. But with something like this, once you get to this point and you have something that, you know, is pulling from data, you get it into a format that you kind of like, you can publish this to Tableau server, and then from there you can share it out onto a website, either embed it on the website or something like that, and so it would automatically update as the data updates on the website. And you could exclude, you know, you can set up the filters. The other thing that we didn't include in here is gift type. So you would want to add gift type on the filters. Maybe go up there and show them that under gift information. Mm-hmm. So that's something you want to think about, because in this particular case, all gift types have been included. So just for you in the background, when you're sorting your data, you want to think, okay, well, maybe I don't want to have both a pledge and a payment against a pledge, because I might be double counting, stuff like that. So just to be able to play with those numbers or play with those gift types and realize what impact it's going to have on your numbers. And you can have other filters, you know, for gift subtype, you know, whatever else that makes sense. So, okay. Well, I hope this was useful for everyone to get a sense of how easy it is to build a thermometer in Tableau. Basically, you need a couple of measures in order to build a bullet chart. One's probably going to be a donation amount or fund total, a total amount given toward a fund rather, and you know, the other probably the goal that you're trying to reach. And yeah, from there Tableau will automatically build in that 60/80 reference line as well as the goal total, and then you can tweak it as far as the formatting goes. Added, you know, more banding in there if you want for the reference lines and all of that. Okay, somebody asked a question, can you put a border around the whole thermometer? You can. There's all kinds of formatting that you can do. You can put a border around that. I think it would be on the sheet itself, or rather in the columns, the formatting of the column itself.
Makes sense here.
So yeah, it would probably be up at the, yeah, go over one, that one.
I guess cell wouldn't make sense in this context, would it? There it is, pane.
Yeah, so that put it around half of it.
And you have to go the other half. And
yeah.
Well, let's put it around all of it.
Yeah, so you just have to play with that, but there's the columns and the rows, and so and then the sheet itself. So that's for sheet that you're on, or the columns as well. So yeah, you can do all kinds of formatting. I mean, you can get in and format to your heart's content, and get it to what you want it to be. So Cool. Any other questions? All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, we're going to go ahead and bid you all adieu. Thank you for attending our webinar today. We are going to stick around for a couple more minutes here. If anyone else, if you do have more questions about anything about this thermometer or anything related to Tableau, we'll stick around here for a few minutes to answer those. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today.